Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer by confronting a profound and, honestly, kind of an unsettling reality. Your very existence relies on the exact, precise shape of microscopic molecules. There's a saying in biology: every breath you take depends on the specific shape of a single protein, hemoglobin. That's the molecule responsible for ferrying oxygen all throughout your blood. Now, if its structure changes by just one single atom, literally just one atom, its ability to carry oxygen completely collapses. It's a pretty striking reminder of just how incredibly delicate the machinery of life truly is.
So, to really understand the human body, we have to learn the absolute golden rule of this explainer: structure dictates function. An altered structure? Well, that is the actual definition of disease. Whether a structure gets warped by pH, by extreme heat, or by a genetic mutation, the end result is exactly the same. The function is lost. In medicine, this is what clinical pathology fundamentally comes down to. It's a disruption of your body's molecular hierarchy.
So, welcome to our deep dive into the microscopic engines that keep us alive. Today, we're exploring the molecular logic of life, and we're going to move from the tiniest atoms all the way up to the entire human machine. We'll uncover how simple, everyday building blocks assemble into complex structures, and how those structures harness energy to keep you breathing, thinking, and moving around.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to hit 6 key areas: the architecture of life, fuel, barriers and signals, workhorses and instruction manuals, the thermodynamics of life, the spark plugs of metabolism, and finally, we'll zoom out to the ultimate metabolic map. Let's get right to it. Starting off with Section 1, the architecture of life. Right, so to understand biology, you first really have to understand carbon. Human life is carbon-based for a very specific structural reason. Carbon can form 4 highly stable covalent bonds. This unique chemical property allows it to create insanely complex 3-dimensional shapes. We're talking linear chains, branches, interlocking rings, the whole shebang. And attached to these carbon backbones are functional groups, like hydroxyls and phosphates, which essentially give each molecule its own distinct biochemical personality. Life is organized entirely from the bottom up, using these foundations. We take simple monomers, the individual building blocks, and we string them together to build larger polymers. Take carbohydrates, for example. We start with monosaccharides, like glucose. Glucose is our universal fuel. And here's something wild. The human body is so highly attuned to this specific molecule that our biological enzymes are stereospecific. That means they only recognize a very specific 3D orientation. It's exactly like how a right-handed glove only fits a right hand. Our enzymes specifically require the D-isomer shape of glucose. Nothing else works. Those individual right-handed glucose molecules are then chained together to form massive polymers, like glycogen for storage. And you know what? That exact same hierarchical logic applies to amino acids building up proteins and nucleotides building up your DNA. Moving right along to Section 2, fuel, barriers, and signals. Let's look at how 2 essential classes of biomolecules, carbohydrates and lipids, actually provide our bodies with energy, cellular identity, and structural boundaries. Basically, these are the fuels that power your machine and the barriers that keep your machine intact. Now, remember our golden rule from earlier about structure and function? Well, when the enzymes required to mobilize these sugar polymers fail, we see immediate, real-world clinical realities. Look at lactose intolerance. We often just think of it as a bad stomachache, right? But it's not. It is a specific molecular failure where the enzyme lactase physically cannot break a very particular beta-1,4 glycosidic bond in milk sugar. Or, for a more severe example, consider glycogen storage diseases. If your body lacks the enzyme needed to break down stored glycogen polymers in the liver, you suffer from dangerous, life-threatening drops in blood sugar, hypoglycemia, alongside massive liver enlargement. The structure fails, the function fails, and disease occurs. It's really that straightforward. Now, it is absolutely fascinating how minor structural changes in lipids completely dictate their physical states. Lipids aren't true polymers. They actually just aggregate together to hide from water. Saturated fats have absolutely no double bonds, making your carbon chains perfectly straight. This allows them to pack tightly together and remain solid at room temperature. Think of a stick of butter. But if you add just one cis double bond, it creates a literal physical kink in the chain. This is what we call an unsaturated fat. That tiny little kink prevents them from packing tightly, which is exactly what keeps your cell membranes fluid, flexible, and functional. It is a flawless architectural design. And actually, it's exactly why artificially created trans fats are so uniquely dangerous to us. Trans fats artificially straighten out that kink, making the lipid act like a solid, saturated fat all over again. This stiffens up your cell membranes and absolutely wreaks havoc on your cardiovascular system. Let's shift gears to Section 3, workhorses and instruction manuals.
If carbohydrates are the fuel, proteins are the molecular workhorses. They act as catalysts and structural pillars. Meanwhile, nucleic acids are the instruction manuals that tell your cells exactly how to build those proteins. While the proteins do the heavy lifting, acting as enzymes for basically every metabolic reaction or providing structural tensile strength for things like bone and skin, two distinctly structured nucleic acid polymers safeguard and translate the blueprints. DNA uses deoxyribose and thymine, which creates a highly stable, heavily guarded vault for long-term genetic storage. RNA, on the flip side, swaps in ribose and uracil. That slight, seemingly minor structural tweak makes RNA far more chemically reactive. And that is exactly what you want for a temporary messenger that's actively involved in synthesizing proteins on the fly. You wouldn't want to crack open the highly stable DNA vault every single time you need one tiny protein built, nor would you want highly reactive instructions just floating around your cells forever. RNA solves this problem perfectly. So a crucial point to consider here is just how fragile this entire system truly is at the molecular level. Think about the billions of nucleotides in your DNA. What happens when just a single one of those microscopic letters is deleted from the instruction manual?
Well, answering that question brings us right back to our golden rule. A single nucleotide deletion in the CFTR gene leads directly to a misfolded protein. Because the structure's wrong, the protein loses its function. It literally cannot transport chloride ions across the cell membrane anymore. And the clinical result of this one single microscopic error? Cystic fibrosis. It all comes down to the shape. Okay, moving to section 4, the thermodynamics of life. Having the blueprint and having the engine is great, but without combustion, you really aren't going anywhere. And this brings us to bioenergetics. Metabolism relies entirely on something called reaction coupling. Because look, if a chemical reaction isn't energetically favorable, life simply ceases. It's game over. So the body strategically takes exergonic reactions, which break things down and spontaneously release energy, and it couples them to power endergonic reactions. Endergonic reactions like building DNA or synthesizing muscle protein are anabolism. They require an immense, massive input of energy. Think of it like demolishing an old brick building. That demolition is an exergonic breakdown that releases a ton of energy and loose bricks. Your body then harnesses that energy and those materials to fund the difficult energonic task of building a brand new structure somewhere else. The universal currency driving all of this is ATP. Now, ATP is not some long-term storage battery. It's a rapid turnover molecule, and the chemical logic here is just brilliant. ATP contains 3 phosphate groups that are highly negatively charged. Because negative charges naturally repel each other, packing 3 of them tightly together is basically like winding up a highly compressed spring. When the body breaks that terminal bond, the spring snaps, violently releasing approximately negative 30.5 kilojoules per mole of thermodynamic energy. I know that just sounds like a random number, but that single snapping bond, that is what powers your entire existence.
Next up, section 5, spark plugs of metabolism. So even with ATP and glucose ready to go, biomolecules like enzymes often can't function alone. They need helpers. We're talking about micronutrients and vitamins that act as literal molecular keys to unlock the energy we just talked about. Let's look at the water-soluble vitamins first. These act primarily as vital coenzymes in energy metabolism. Energy extraction is essentially just moving electrons from your food over to oxygen, and you need shuttles to carry those electrons. Niacin, or vitamin B3, builds NAD+, which is a critical electron shuttle. Deficiencies here cause rapid, catastrophic systemic failures. Lacking B3 leads to a disease called pellagra, which is characterized terrifyingly by the 4 Ds: dermatitis, diarrhea, dementia, and ultimately death. Or take vitamin C. Without it, collagen can't be hydroxylated. Hydroxylation basically adds oxygen and hydrogen crosslinks to the collagen, acting like molecular rebar to give the protein its strength. Without that rebar, your structural proteins completely fail, leading to the bleeding gums and poor wound healing that we know as scurvy. Meanwhile, the fat-soluble vitamins operate as your body's vital regulators and protectors. Vitamin A maintains your epithelial borders and your vision. Vitamin D functions way more like a hormone than a typical vitamin. It actually travels directly into the nucleus of your cells to change gene expression, commanding the biomolecules that regulate your calcium and bone mineralization. Vitamin E is your biological shield, a really powerful antioxidant protecting your fluid cell membranes from degrading. And vitamin K is absolutely essential for modifying specific clotting factors, keeping your bleeding in check. Without these keys, the biological engines simply stall out.
Finally, we reach section 6, the ultimate metabolic map. Having built our molecules, fueled them, sparked their engines, and managed their thermodynamics, it's time to zoom all the way out. Looking at the interconnected machine of the human body as a whole reveals a pretty fundamental truth of human physiology. You are not at equilibrium. Actually, equilibrium in biology means death. You are instead in a dynamic, continuous, steady state. Your body is constantly, tirelessly balancing the fed state, where we build biomolecules through an anabolism, and the starvation state, where we break them down through catabolism. The grand intersection of all this building and breaking happens right inside your mitochondria. If the mitochondria fail, whether due to genetics or toxins, the whole steady state crashes, and it primarily takes down your high-energy organs like the brain and the heart first. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you to just marvel at the fragile, beautiful thermodynamic balance of your own existence. Every single step you take, every thought you have, relies on a constant, frantic exchange of energy governed entirely by the microscopic shapes of the molecules inside of you. So I have to ask, is your steady state as secure as you feel it is? Or is the entire machine just one single structural shift away from failing? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the molecular logic of life. Keep questioning and keep learning.